About 6:30, it's after 6:30 actually, so I will call this meeting to order. And I'll ask if you have them to silence any cell phones or other electronic devices. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that Council remove the motion regarding procurement, which is item... Which one? 9.5. 10.5 maybe? No. 10.3, thank you. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Tadman, that Council add an item to the closed session pursuant to the Ontario Municipal Act 2001 as amended. Subsection 239(2)F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, being a matter concerning the possible need for a record of site condition. This will require a 2/3 majority vote. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion is carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that Council alter the agenda to move item 4.1 under announcements to section 15 correspondence, being item 15.4. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that Council approve the August 12, 2019 agenda as amended. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion is carried. And Council, do you have any announcements this evening? There. We haven't met for what? Councillor LeBlanc. I knew I could count on somebody.
Well, we had a pizza cook-off, and we raised close to $700 for Horizon, for here at, what's the name of that place? Special Effects. And now the new cook-off is going to be for chili, which I hear Elmi Rowley is going to win because her chili is amazing. The deputy mayor says that hers was amazing. Mine is really good. Mr. Mark Bateman is going to be here. We need Mary Tadman and Ron Anderson to join in so that this money can be raised for a good cause.
Councillor Tadman, you can join me in eating the chili. How's that sound?
Well, I don't know. It's kind of sketchy with the ones that are making it.
I'm a little nervous myself, but we'll give it our best effort. Councillor Bateman.
I just wanted to follow up on Councillor LeBlanc's announcement. It was a fun day for those that visited, and it was fun taking on Councillor LeBlanc and his lack of cooking skills. However, it did end in a tie, but I do want to point out that it wasn't actually a tie, and I'll take that up with my wife because she failed to vote for me.
Uh-oh. Try not to bring that to Council, Councillor Bateman. And gentlemen, do you want to tell us where the money went? There's money raised for...
It's Sunny Days Group.
There you go. Thank you very much. Any other announcements? Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. On Wednesday of last week, I went to Port Hope, sat at a round table with our MPP Pacini and Solicitor General Jones, I believe, regarding animal welfare enforcement. I will be drafting some kind of report and following up with that.
Thank you, Councillor Rowley, and thank you for representing the municipality at that. Is there any other announcements? I was at Memorial Park on Saturday at a fundraiser held by the DBA on behalf of the Legion. It's always great to have music in our park. Any day. Unfortunately, the highway was closed, so it was preventing people from getting downtown at the time that I was there, but that's the way it goes in Brighton sometimes, but it was still good to have local talent and talent from out of town coming to support the Legion in their fundraising efforts for a new roof. And I'm going to go back to declarations of pecuniary interest and ask if there are any declarations of pecuniary interest, and if so, please state the general nature thereof. Are none noted?
go back to announcements?
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. Just last Thursday as well, between the Community Events Committee and the DBIA, we hosted our first movie in the park, and all went well. Next week, Thursday, the 22nd, I believe, we're having number 2, and hopefully we'll still get one in September yet before Applefest. So bring your lawn chairs, pick up your free bag of chips and water from the DBIA, but it was a fun evening.
And I understand you might want to bring some bug spray as well.
Spray was there for those who needed it, yeah.
Any other announcements before I move on? Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that Council approve the July 3rd, 2019 special meeting of Council minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that Council approve the July 9th, 2019 special meeting of Council minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion is carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that Council approve the July 10th special meeting of Council minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion is carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that Council approve the July 15th, 2019 Council meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. And I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Vink, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that Council approve the July 17th planning meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion is carried. And I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Vink, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that Council move into the statutory public meeting August 12th, 2019 at 6:40 p.m. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion is carried. The purpose of tonight's statutory public meeting is to hold a public meeting under the Development Charges Act. Section 12 states that before a passing of a development charge bylaw, the council shall hold at least one public meeting, give at least 20 days notice of the meeting, ensure that the proposed bylaw and the background study are made available to the public at least 2 weeks prior to the meeting, that any person who attends a meeting under this section may make representation relating to the proposed bylaw. The municipality of Brighton advertised for the public meeting in the Brighton Independent, Metroland Media on July 11th, 2019, and on the municipal website on July 4th, 2019. The development charges background study was placed on the municipal website on July 4th, 2019, and I will turn the floor over to Andrew Grunda of Watson & Associates, who has a PowerPoint presentation, and then council will hear from the public with regard to the 2019 development charges study. Welcome back, Andrew.
Thank you. So it's a pleasure to be in front of council again on this matter. As noted in the introduction, development charges, sorry, my slides don't appear to be advancing here on the screen anyway. Yeah, it's working in front of me, just not up on the, up there. This is working, right? We're moving up there.
Let's just open it again. Where is it? This one. That's the one, right? Okay, where's from beginning?
Just click on that.
Where? Here?
Yeah. That looks better. Perfect. All right, thank you. Sorry about that. So as mentioned again in the introduction, this is a statutory requirement of the Development Charges Act for council to hold a public meeting on the matter. And just to put development charges in some context, what development charges are is a mechanism that council has available to them to defray some of the costs of capital that relate to the increase in need for service for new development. And to defray the impact on the tax base in that regard, recognizing that existing constituents have a sufficient level of service to meet their demands. And so to the extent that there's an expansion required as a result of development, these are the types of charges that are imposed to recover those costs from those new developments. And so the municipality has a history of imposing development charges. The current development charge bylaw was that is operating today was passed in 2014 in September of that year. And the bylaws have a 5-year life, requiring council to consider adopting a new bylaw within that 5-year term to be able to continue to impose these charges after the current bylaw expires on September the 8th. And so, again, as mentioned in the introduction, it's a requirement that the municipality give notice of the public meeting, that a public background study be available on the municipality's website, and that has been provided as of July the 4th. And in addition to that, the municipality has gone beyond the requirements of the Development Charges Act to consult with the stakeholders in that regard. There was an initial workshop that we had with council back in June, just advising council of some of the forthcoming amendments arising from Bill 108. We also met and advised the development industry stakeholders of those same amendments, as well as the preliminary findings, to receive their input before publishing that report. We met with them on June the 28th, published that report on July 4th. We've received correspondence from them at the end of July, which we provided a response to some of their specific questions that weren't addressed at the meeting. And so tonight is the statutory public meeting for council to hear from the general public on the proposal. And then those decisions will be brought forward to council for its considered adoption on September the 3rd to allow you to continue to impose these charges beyond September the 8th, when your current bylaw will expire. And so in the DC background study, you'll see the methodology and the details of adhering to that methodology being provided. This illustration summarizes the requirements of the Act, and that we have to look at the anticipated amount of development that's expected in the municipality over the required statutory periods. Having understood that anticipated development, then to look at council's expressions of need with respect to those increases in service, whether that be improvements to the road network, additional water and wastewater service provision, and the like, that would seek to meet that increase in need for service of development. Having understood those needs and measured them relative to historic levels of service to ensure that the historic level of service is being maintained and not improved with respect to new development. That then allows us to determine what the capital costs are with respect to each project. And so in Chapter 5 of our background study, you'll see the detailed capital projects for each service. And then what you'll also see included in that chapter in those summaries is also the statutory deductions that are highlighted in gold at the right-hand side of this illustration. Most notably, that in some cases where additional capacity is being provided, it's also replacing existing infrastructure, and that would be deemed to be a benefit to existing under the Act and have to be funded from non-DC sources, so traditionally from the tax base or water and wastewater rates where that occurs. Also, if there's any anticipated grants, subsidies, or contributions towards any of those projects, they also need to be considered and deducted. And finally, for soft services under the Act, such as parks and recreation and library, for example, there's also a 10% statutory deduction that's required. And so having made those deductions with respect to those capital projects provides us with the net capital costs that would be funded from these DCs. And so the charges that you see presented in the background study and here this evening would be collected at the time of building permit issuance from new development be contributed into a reserve fund and would act as a source of funds for council to use when those projects come through your capital budget process annually. Again, to defray those costs from the tax base. As we mentioned at our meeting back in June, there is an amendment to the Development Charges Act, the majority of which is not yet in effect, but will have implications on this proposed DC bylaw in 2020. The More Homes, More Choice Act, which has received royal assent on June 6, will have the impact of removing what is commonly referred to as soft services from the authority of the Development Charges bylaw, but gives council the ability to recover those costs for soft services under a community charges benefiting bylaw under the Planning Act. And so in 2020, what's currently being proposed is that by the end of next year, municipalities will have to amend their bylaw to remove those soft services, like you'll see presented herein, for services like parks, recreation, library, health, and admin, and look to impose those under the authority of the Planning Act. Council will learn more of that once regulation proclaims that. The other charges for roads, fire, water, and wastewater will remain in effect under the current bylaw as being considered by council at this time. In addition to those changes, also the imposition of the charges will change once the amendment is proclaimed, where now development charges are fully imposed and collected at the time of building permit issuance based on the rates that are in effect at that time of building permit issuance. Bill 108 will now change that, where if there's a development that's occurring that proceeded through planning applications of site plan approval or a zoning bylaw amendment, those charges will be frozen at the time that those applications were made under the Planning Act, but collected later when it's either the time of building permit issuance or related to the time of occupancy. What we also know is that certain types of developments, such as rental housing, commercial, industrial, and institutional developments, will no longer be paying development charges fully at the time of building permit issuance, but will be allowed to have those charges imposed over 6 annual installments of a 5-year period, commencing at the time of occupancy. And for not-for-profit housing, that installment period will be 21 years, commencing at the time of occupancy. So, as I've mentioned, the majority of the amendments in Bill 108, which are contained in Schedule 3, that pertain to the development charge, are not yet in effect. We're waiting on regulations of the province to put those in effect, which we would expect to see in this later this fall. What that means from a DC perspective at this point, recognizing council has to adopt a new bylaw to continue to impose these charges, is that council is allowed to continue to impose charges for both hard and soft services until that section of the amending bill is proclaimed. And that's what's contained in the bylaw and background study and being presented here this evening. And so, summarizing the details of the background study as contained in Chapter 3 and in detail in Appendix, the growth forecast projections are reflective of those in Northumberland County's forecast for the area municipalities to 2041. It also looks at what we refer to here as a build-out, being the full build-out of the designated urban area for the purposes of water and wastewater services. And when we look at the anticipated growth in the municipality as provided in the county's projections to 2041, it's expected that the municipality's housing units would grow by an additional 11%, or about 555 additional dwelling units, resulting in an increase in population of about 770 persons. Similarly, with respect to employment, it's expected that the number of employment jobs in the municipality in the form of commercial, industrial, and institutional would grow about 257 additional employment jobs, or about 13% from the current employment today. And that would require the development of about 216,000 square feet of floor area to accommodate that employment demand. So with that anticipated growth, again, as identified in detail in the background study, we have a number of services that are being impacted for which capital costs have been identified. The soft services, as defined under the Act, include parks and recreation services. So this includes costs related to outstanding debt of the municipality's community center, additional development of trails and park amenities, as well as equipment to maintain that infrastructure. Library costs with respect to the oversized capacity of the existing library to accommodate growth, and the corresponding collection materials that they would benefit from to be purchased over the 10-year period. Health services is a new service that's been identified to reflect the demands of the Brighton Health Services expansion to be accommodated by the municipality, and therefore a portion of that expansion cost being included in the calculation. And lastly, under the soft services, administrative studies such as this DC study, official plan updates, community improvement plans, and the like that have a benefit to development. For the harder services, again, we're looking for the growth forecast out to 2041. As mentioned earlier, for road improvements and corresponding equipment to maintain that level of service. Fire facility expansions and equipment to provide fire protection for the additional population and employment demands. And then lastly, over the full urban build-out of the water and wastewater system, additional capacity and oversizing improvements to accommodate those demands. And so the capital costs that are included in the background study total just under $24 million over those respective periods. As you can see from the pie chart illustrated here, about 43% or about 10.3 million would be recoverable from development charges, either in the form of the existing reserve funds that you've accumulated to date of about 3.4 million, or the additional 7 million that's anticipated to be recovered over those respective forecast periods. As you see from the various deductions, there's also a component in there referred to as post-period benefit. That's reflecting that there's about $500,000 in oversized capacity in the fire expansions as well as in the Brighton Health Services Center. That could be included in future DCs beyond the forecast period identified here. And also about 1.4 million in additional contributions and funding towards the wastewater needs that have also been deducted. And so when we look at that DC recoverable cost share of about 6.9 million that's included in this calculation of these charges, as we see quite commonly across the province, the majority of these costs, about 3/4 of them, are for hard services of roads, water, and wastewater. In terms of the overall needs over the respective period, the softer services representing the other roughly 1/4 of the charge. And so the proposed charges to recover those costs over the respective periods are provided in the draft bylaw and summarized in Chapter 6 of the background study. As you can see, the charges are determined based on the various services and the respective development. It determines the charges for both residential and non-residential types of development. With respect to residential, what it also reflects is that the occupancy exhibited in types of residential dwelling units are different, and for an equity purpose, the charges should reflect that demand for service. So, for example, if somebody was constructing a single and semi-detached unit in the fully urban serviced area, the proposed development charge would be $10,264. If they were constructing a bachelor and one-bedroom apartment, that charge would be $5,384, again reflective of the lower amount of occupants typically exhibited in those types of dwelling units. The non-residential charge that could be imposed on all types of industrial, commercial, and institutional development in the fully urban serviced area would be $6.18 per square foot. And so when we compare those charges to the charges currently imposed today, what we see is that both the residential and non-residential charges are increasing by about 19% in total from where they are today. Largely that increase is accounted for by the increase in the road program, reflective of the increase in capital costs and some of the additional projects that have been identified. To provide some further context, what we've also done is looked at corresponding development charges in some of the surrounding area municipalities as well. And so when we look at this comparison of charges, it's not only lower tier area municipalities that have the ability to impose development charges, also upper tier municipalities like the county can impose charges, as well as regional governments. and school boards. And so when we look at the total development charges, again, that are currently in effect today at around $8,600, it's a bit higher than that in Prince Edward County and slightly less than that than we see in Quinte West. The proposed charge would see the charges of $10,300 being slightly higher than that in Quinte West, which is currently about $9,800 today, less than that in Crammy and in areas of Belleville as well, and well below those that we see exhibited in the GTA and some of the areas of the county that are much closer to the GTA. Similarly, when we look at the commercial charges, again, the roughly $1 per square foot increase would see the municipality of Brighton keeping its same relative position to the market, generally comparable with that in Belleville, lower than that in serviced areas of Port Hope and Cobourg, and slightly higher than that in areas such as Quinte West. And then finally, when we look at the comparison in terms of industrial, what we note is that on the far right-hand side, the municipality's current policy, and what is also being proposed in the bylaw for council's consideration, is to fully exempt industrial from the payment of DCs. What this is illustrating with the arrow is that council could elect to impose up to the amount that's identified as the Brighton calculated rate, which would be, again, sort of generally comparable with that in Belleville. But as you see, other municipalities, such as the existing area within Cobourg, Peterborough, Prince Edward County, and Quinte West, also provide the incentive of fully exempting industrial, recognizing some of those economic development considerations and enticing that type of development in your community. So with that comparison, what council will also see and the public will see in the background study and proposed bylaw are the corresponding rules and policies that would govern its administration. So consistent with the current practice today, the municipality would adopt one bylaw where all of the charges would be imposed on a uniform municipal-wide basis, irrespective of where development occurs, with the exception of water and wastewater, which would only be imposed in the urban serviced area. As mentioned earlier, the charges would continue to be payable at the time of building permit issuance. And while that is the provision under the Act, Council does have the ability to be able to enter into agreements with developers as Council sees fit to either delay the timing of those payments or accelerate them, but that is done under agreement that's mutually agreeable to both parties. The charges that are before council are denominated in current values and will continue to be indexed on the anniversary date of the bylaw, allowing it to keep pace with inflation. Also, the charges that are currently being proposed, there are certain statutory exemptions that council has to witness. So if council was to impose an industrial development charge, the Act does not allow municipalities to impose that where there's an addition of an existing building, as long as it's only serving to expand its existing floor area by 50%. Also, development charges are not paid on municipal property or boards of education for their purposes of development, and also for residential development. If you have an existing single-family home, the Act allows you to add 2 additional dwelling units within that home with no development charges being payable, and 1 additional unit on other types of development. The non-statutory exemptions that council has some discretion over are relatively limited. As we mentioned earlier, council currently exempts industrial fully from the payment of DCs, and that's being proposed to be maintained. The only other exemption is with respect to places of worship, in that they are also exempt from payment of development charges. And finally, because development can occur in the form of redevelopment activity where a site is either being demolished and rebuilt or converting from one principal use to another, the Act recognizes that where there's an existing use that is being demolished or converted, that a credit from payment should be identified where it's simply just replacing like for like. And those credits are witnessed as long as that redevelopment occurs within roughly 5 years of that demolition or that initial conversion. However, if the conversion or demolition serves to simply demolish something that was previously exempt that never paid DCs, then no DC credit would be witnessed. And so In terms of next steps from today, obviously, is for council to receive input from the public on the matter. Between this evening and the bylaw coming forward to council on September the 3rd, for council to give consideration to any amendments that may be required. And then that bylaw would come forward for your consideration and approval on that date to put those new charges in effect on September the 8th. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Grunda. So I will ask if there is anyone present who wishes to make any comment or has any questions with regard to the 2019 Development Charges Study. Please come forward.
Thank you for recognizing me. Good evening. I came here not necessarily...
Des?
Sorry,
state
Des
your name.
Rodriguez.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Necessarily for this. First of all, it's a very good presentation, extremely extensive. I think very difficult for anyone in here to totally absorb, so I'm not quite sure. Is the PowerPoint going to be put on the municipal website so we can...
It is available on the
Is it
website now.
available now?
Well, I don't know, is this PowerPoint presentation available on the website? The study is, as part of the agenda it is, yes.
Okay.
But the study is on the municipal website, which is what this PowerPoint presentation comes from.
Okay. So a couple questions. The removal of the soft, whatever you call them, the issues from the DCA, some of them are fairly, substantial to a lot of people, things like library funds, and most of us know that that all municipalities in the province have to have a balanced budget. So in saying that, do we see that development under all the parameters of this presentation is going to offset the removal of these soft, what do you call them? Soft services. Soft services, sorry, that would offset and that we wouldn't be absorbing as residents an increase in property tax based on any shortfall. So is that being looked at or encompassed at all?
Yes, so that's a good question. So what the province has indicated is that while they're changing...
Mr. Grunda, could I get you to speak into the microphone, please? Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry. So this is an amendment that has come forward recently from the new provincial government. What it looks to do is to move those soft services from this DC tool into something referred to as a community benefits charge tool, but that will be under the authority of the Planning Act. What the province has indicated to date is that will not impact municipalities' funding for those services. However, at the moment, we're waiting to see regulation from the province that will allow us to better assess what those impacts may be. And that should be coming forward across the province in 2020, whereby the end of 2020, all municipalities will have to transition those services out of the DC realm into the Planning Act Community Benefits Charge.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else with comments or questions?
Brenda Richardson. When you're saying when the development charges are going to change and it could be up to council, it could be over a period of time that they would pay these development charges or at issuing time. So is that going to be like they could look at each development individually? Is that how it would be? Or is it what they would set a bylaw like just for, okay, every developer has 5 years to pay their charges? Is that, or they look at each one?
Again, that's a good question. So, as we mentioned in the presentation, so today, development charges are generally payable in full at the time of building permit issuance. Council has the ability, where they see fit, to enter into agreements with developers to either have them pay those in advance of that date, where sometimes developers are looking to provide assistance to the municipality from a cash flow perspective, or to delay the recovery of those charges to a later point in time. Council still has that power to do that. What we noted in the presentation, though, is that in addition to the changes I was referring to earlier by the province. What the province is also requiring of municipalities starting in 2020 is that if you are building rental housing, commercial developments, industrial developments, or institutional developments, council will have to recover those over a 5-year period. Council will no longer have the ability to demand that those payments be made at the time of building permit issuance. So that will be a new requirement of all municipalities in the province starting in 2020.
So basically, the bottom line is then, depending, like, if someone was putting in a subdivision and they figure they're going to be finished in 2 years, so that council could say, well, okay, you've got 2 years to pay for this, because in the meantime, when the town is, if they've got 5 years to pay for it, and we've assumed this road, and they haven't paid all their charges, but yet we're plowing it, maintaining it and everything, and that would be something that they would have to look at as in regards to when they're determining if they're going to pay it in full or over a period of time, right?
Yes, exactly. So council has to, so what council will have to give consideration to, obviously, as we mentioned, is these are charges that help council provide those capital projects through their budget. If they're deferring the collection of those, then there's going to be less money available in the reserve fund to pay for those as they come due. And so as a result, municipalities may have to look at borrowing more money than maybe they otherwise would. Those are considerations that council would have to look at to determine whether or not they would want to use those tools, but those tools are available to them.
And just before I call on others, if I may, that the development charges are intended to cover the costs of capital projects, not operational costs. And capital projects that are that may be burdened on the municipality based on growth, not on what we might do anyway if we didn't bring another person into the community.
That's correct.
Yeah. Is there anyone else present who wishes to make a comment or has a question? There are none noted. Are there any questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Tadman.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Am I understanding correctly that now, if this is passed, it will remain the same because of we won't be doing anything with the soft services till 2020, probably near the end of the year?
That's correct.
Okay. And as I said the last time you presented this, I just don't understand the province with soft services. We don't all, but most people use libraries, health services, parks and things, and I just don't understand why they're cutting that out, but they have. There must have been a lot of screaming because they made an amendment.
Any other comments from members of council? Councillor Anderson.
I foresee a real transition taking place when this comes down at the time that it comes down. For municipalities will have a real challenge because everything will change. Their costing formula, their budgeting planning, because of the time we're in a growth time. And I look at some of these numbers too, not that none of this is in stone, it's not a budget, right? But our growth is going to probably be more substantial than what's used as a comparison here, especially when you've got a couple of large developments on the horizon and some other residential growth as well. So it's going to be an interesting time, and I agree with Mary, Councillor Tadman there. It's going to be tough. But there was a bottom line there. They're not going to hold, when it came to soft goods, you said that they weren't going to, what were they not going to do is hold us to, I wish I had your words there.
Yeah, so what's currently being communicated by the province is that this transition to community benefits charges will not impact the funding of those services that was previously provided under the DC. However, as we discussed at the last meeting with council, it's really in the details of the regulation to see how they will use certain parameters like a maximum prescribed rate that they can impose for those community benefits charges to see whether there will be an impact in this municipality or others.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from council? Do you have any final comments, Mr. Grenda?
No, I do not.
Thank you. May I assume by the conversation that council is prepared to have the bylaw come forward as we've seen tonight, no changes. So we'll see that come forward on September 3rd. Thank you very much. I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Vink, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that Council rise from the statutory public meeting August 12th, 2019 at 7:13 p.m. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. We have two delegations this evening. The first is Catherine Barr, representing the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation. And I'll remind Council that we invited MPAC to come before Council. So if it's okay with Council, I'm not going to impose the 10-minute delegation time limit on these people, but they have committed to doing this as close to the 10 minutes as humanly possible, understanding that, you know, not everybody wants to stay till midnight. Welcome. If you push the lavender purple button in front of you, there you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship and members of Council, for the opportunity to present tonight. My name is Catherine Barr, and I'm an account manager with Municipal Stakeholder Relations, covering the Trenton region, which is comprised of Northumberland County, Hastings County, Prince Edward County, the City of Belleville, and the City of Quinte West and Prince Edward County. I have with me Heather Cahoon, our regional manager, and she covers Zone 3, which is comprised of the region of Durham, region of York, and the Trenton region. So thank you for the opportunity to present this evening. Our goal today is really just give you a bit of an introduction to who we are, who is MPAC, what we do, how do we fit into the property assessment and taxation cycle, the system rather. We're going to be talking about the property assessment cycle and the changes that have been made recently. We're going to just do a quick intro on how we assess particular types of properties, namely residential, farm, and home-based businesses. And we're also going to be highlighting some information that your residents can use to find out about their assessment, find out more about how we assess, etc., and to resolve any concerns. So MPAC is actually part of a multiplayer system. Basically, there's 4 parties that are involved in the property and assessment taxation system. Obviously, it revolves around property owners, and the Government of Ontario actually creates the legislation on how and when MPAC is to assess properties. They also set out the tax system, tax rates, tax ratios, and legislation around that. They also set the educational tax rates that municipalities are required to collect on their behalf. Municipalities, you are responsible for determining your revenue requirements to deliver the services that you provide. And MPAC, in our role, we provide the assessed value of all the properties within your municipality and the classification of those properties to help you with your revenue needs when you're deliberating on your budgets. Now, we are required to provide a province-wide assessment updates. So in essence, we assess all properties, so we assign a value and a classification for all properties within the province on a 4-year cycle. Currently, we're in the 2016 assessment cycle, which covers the tax years 2017 to 2020. We are now preparing for a 2020 assessment update, and that covers the tax years 2021 to 2024. So those valuation dates are set by the province of Ontario. And in essence, January 1st, 2019 is the legislated valuation date that MPAC is working towards. So we are going to assess and assign a value for all properties as of that date, January 1st, 2019. So property owners will receive a property assessment notice in 2020 with a value as of that prescriptive date. Now, the assessment cycle, as I said, it's in 4-year increments, and our next one that we're working towards is January 1st, 2019. But the timeline shows here that we will be delivering property assessment notices to every property owner in Ontario next year, and we're staggering the mail out of those notices. So we're starting in June through to October. I believe it's about mid-year for this area. And if there are any assessment increases to a value, they are actually phased in. They are not applied immediately, and I will demonstrate what that means, what a phase-in means. So this is an example of a property assessment that was valued as of this assessment cycle, January 1st, 2016, at $345,000. The next assessment update, January 1st, 2019, it increased to $375,000. So that's a $30,000 increase, but that is phased in over 4 years to the equivalent of $7,500 each year. Please note that if there are any decreases in assessed values, they are applied immediately. They are not phased in. So just to give you a little bit of intro or background to MPAC and what we do, we assess all properties, as I was saying, in the province of Ontario. So that is over 5 million properties. We do have 1,700 employees across the province, and our property assessment role across the province is equivalent to 2.78 trillion in property value. So we do have a highly diverse assessment base, and I'm sure you can appreciate that some properties are more complex than others, so we do have a lot of assessment experts as part of our team to deliver the assessment role and to keep our information up to date and ensure that municipalities have the most accurate assessment information at hand. So this is just a pictorial demonstration of the entire assessment role for Ontario. Obviously, there's more residential properties in the province, but we also assess a diverse selection of farms, multi-residential properties, commercial, industrial, special and exempt. That would be hospitals or municipal properties that are exempt from taxation. Or provincial or crown-owned properties. Here is just to depict what is in municipality of Brighton. Again, not too much different. Most of your assessment base is residential properties, but you do have the next largest segment would be farm, and then it goes down in commercial, multi-res, industrial, and special and exempt, totaling $1.5 billion in assessed value. So our work doesn't only happen every 4 years. In essence, we are always updating assessment information. We do take our role seriously. We investigate all sales. So we do have information of all sales transactions that go through land registry offices because we need to collect that data to advise us on our assessed values. We also review building permits, and we try to collect them because that means new assessment growth. So rather than just an assessment role delivery, we're also trying to achieve new assessment on an annual basis. We also deal with requests for reconsiderations when property owners ask us to review the value that we have returned, and also dealing with appeals. So that would be Assessment Review Board, independent adjudicator reviewing an appeal or reviewing our value. We also have our own initiated reviews, and this could be in response to legislation change. The most recent one that took actually a lot of work were the small-scale value-added farm legislation, which was an initiative, actually a change in legislation where the government was trying to encourage small-scale or on-farm industry and commercial practices to get a slight reduction in tax rate. And So we had to do a significant review of all farms and narrow down which ones were actually eligible for that particular subclass. It's a tax subclass. We also review financials and financial returns for various corporations, depending on the type of property, because we have different approaches to valuation, and so we require financials or financial returns for commercial or multi-residential income-producing properties. We also have planning services that assist us with planning, because planning is very important to assessment as well. So I thought I'd just touch on briefly, knowing time is of the essence, about how we assess properties. And we often refer to CVA. Actually, CVA is the value a property might reasonably expected to sell for if sold by a willing seller to a willing buyer after appropriate time and exposure on an open market. That's long-winded, but in essence, current value is simply a market value at a moment in time. So as I said, currently we are working to the January 1st, 2016 valuation date. Approaches to value. Well, with all the different types of properties there's different approaches, and these approaches are widely used across the world and many other assessment jurisdictions. So direct comparison or sales comparison, what we use for residential property. So we look at recent sales of comparable properties, and these are analyzed to provide an indication of value. And this is critical for our residential assessment base. So we do look at sales comparison. An income approach is actually used for properties that earn income. So we have a picture there of an office building. It could also be multi-residential property. It could be a shopping center where there is a landlord with various leaseholds. So we look at the income and how much that property could generate. We also look at the cost approach for industrial property. So we look at how much would it cost to replace that property, less depreciation, plus the cost of the land that it's sitting on. So there's a variety of approaches that we employ depending on the type of property. So valuing residential properties, like we do look at over 200 factors when we're valuing residential properties, but I really wanted to focus on the top 5 factors that actually comprise about 85% of the residential home value, and that is the age of the property. That would be adjusted for any major renovations or additions. We look at the living area, so the square footage of the residence. We also look at the location, the lot dimensions, and the quality of the construction. So besides those 5 factors, we also look at any secondary structures, garages, sheds, and any site features. Does it abut a golf course or green space or traffic pattern? All of those factors are considered in arriving at our value. So farm values, we were asked to speak about farm values because the last assessment update, farmland did see the most significant increase of all the property sectors in terms of valuation. And I don't want to go into the legislation or a detail because it is quite detailed, but in essence, I wanted to point out that we assess farms based on farmland that is sold to farmers. So we look at sales of those. So we do not look at the development potential or the potential of the land. So we are only looking at bona fide farm sales. So that's important to know. And really, this slide here does explain in greater detail the reasons why the values have increased. So, in essence, it's supply and demand, the economics argument. Supply, the demand has significantly outweighed the supply of land. particularly for properties with more productive soils, so Class 1, Class 2 soil classes. There have been historically low interest rates that farmers have been able to access to expand their operations. There's also been large intensive livestock operations that need more land for nutrient management and cropping requirements. In eastern and northern Ontario, high values also reflect buyers that are moving from southwest Ontario, where the prices have increased as well, and they're moving to search for lower price lands. So all of those factors have weighed into significant value increases for farmland. This is also supported by the fact that we've had our values verified and confirmed by the Farm Credit Canada, which is the mortgage authority for farmers, and our values are in line with Farm Credit Canada. So we've had these values confirmed, and in essence, we have not had significant requests for reconsideration or appeals. So that's always a testament. I wanted to just give you a bit of a screenshot. Bit small, I think, for some in the audience to see, but this is really a screenshot from our About My Property, which is a website portal I'll tell you about a little bit later, and it's giving you the market trends for Northumberland County, and really it's to demonstrate the market shift in various areas. The darker the color of the circle, that means the greater the percentage of value change from 2016 to 2017. And the larger the circle, the more productive, the more properties are in that particular area. And on our website, we actually have the rate per acre for Class 1 land. Now, Class 1, there actually is not very much Class 1 land in the municipality of Brighton. It's mostly Class 2 and 3. But that's giving you an indication, and I highly recommend, if people want to learn more about it, to turn to About My Property. And without further ado, I'll just do this. You can do the
So thanks, Catherine, for that. So Catherine gave a lot of great information that actually is a pretty good segue into giving you some additional information in regards to home-based businesses. Again, we understand this is another area of interest from members of council. So in regards to some of the things that Catherine had mentioned earlier, one of the things that we do is that land used for residential purposes, they are considered part of the residential property class, and therefore would be in that classification of residential. And of course, any classification is really what dictates which tax class or tax rate you apply to it to generate the tax revenue that you do. And when we look at any property as well, when we look at a residential property, in addition to that and how we make some of the determination in regards to the classification of the property, use is a predominant thing that we look at. So the use of a property often will dictate what classification it could be in. And in addition to that, we'll also often look at zoning as well. That's very helpful for us. So if a portion of a property is used for other purposes that were relative to the residential, it may be necessary for MPAC to value those components separately and sum the component values to actually achieve the correct total value of that property. It may also be necessary to actually apportion out a total value of the property between the various parts of the property to ensure that the appropriate tax rate is applied to the relevant parts of the property. So on a residential property, you can have commercial or industrial activity that can take place, but it is actually on a residential property. And those activities could be within a commercial or industrial structure that has been built on the property. It could be within a residential structure, or it can be in a portion of the residence. So it's not necessarily always standalone. It can be within a house, or it can be in a separate structure. There are many types of business activities that may occur on a residential property. There is obviously a broad spectrum from an individual conducting administrative work at a desk in their home to actually having a fully functioning office, let's say, that has a separate entrance, and you'd actually have staff employed, although they don't live at the home, they actually go to the home to work. In regards to that, it is important to note that not all commercial activity occurring on residential property is eligible for commercial classification. And I'll give you some examples of that in the next slide. So I'm going to give you some examples in regards to the factors that are taken in consideration when determining if a portion of a residential property should be moved into the commercial class. So one of the things that we look at is the portion of the property used for residential purposes as well? So if the same area is also used for residential purposes, then it cannot be placed into the commercial class. And an example, there's a couple examples I can give, and this actually picture hopefully depicts it fairly well. Somebody who gives music instructions, often the piano is located within their living room or their family room, and so when they're doing class, they have someone come in, they sit at the piano, they teach them how to play, and when they're not teaching, the family uses that as their living room and may play the piano. Another case where we've seen that is yoga. It's not uncommon for people to offer yoga classes out of their home where they charge. And in some cases, some people will actually use a space that's actually used for living areas. So their living room, they'll push away the furniture, they open up the space in the middle of the living room, they do their class, they push the furniture back, and then they use the living room as a residence when they're not obviously teaching class. And then in other cases, sometimes you'll have yoga where they'll actually have a separate building outside. So that's an example, or a few examples in regards to what we have to look at when it's in a residential home. The other thing that we look at too is the scale and the nature of the activity that's undertaken on the property. So again, we look at business elements such as signage that might be on the home. Sometimes there is not. We'll look at, is there any designated parking on that property that's really attributed to the business itself. We also look to see, is there a separate entrance? Have they designated and delineated a space that's separate to the business? And we also will look at, do they have any non-resident employees that are actually coming to the home to work? That is all factored into the determination of whether or not a commercial property class would be apportioned out for the residential property. The other thing that we look at is, does the commercial activity take place in a building separate from the house? So if the separate building is not also used for residential purposes in the example that I gave you earlier, then it can actually fall into the commercial class by default under the legislation that we have. So if it's not used for residential and it isn't defined under any of the other parts within the Assessment Act, then it actually defaults to commercial. We also look at the Assessment Act. It provides us provisions, and we will portion out the property to be classified in the different areas or the different classes of real property. So for an example, if somebody is operating a hairdressing shop in their home and it's a separate delineated space that is not used for residential purposes, we will take a value that is a portion of that overall value of that home, and we would apply a commercial tax class to that small portion. And MPAC does review the information submitted by municipalities. That's how we do find out about this information that is related to commercial use on a residential property. And that often will include notification that there is a sign that's been posted. So there's actually signage up. So different people would obviously see that there is a business that's being operated out of the home. And with some municipalities too, they require business licenses. So if somebody's taken out a business license, often the municipality will advise MPAC so that we can actually go and investigate whether or not a commercial tax class is appropriate on that property. It is also very important to note that every property is very different when it comes to a home-based business, and so each will be assessed and classified based on its own facts and merits once we actually go out and take a look. So in some circumstances, we will find that no commercial classification is appropriate, and in other cases, we will find where it does, and we will make those changes for the assessment roll. And just to note specifically to Brighton, in the past, we have received information from the municipality in regards to home-based businesses. We have gone out and investigated, and then we've provided any of our determinations based on our review on all those factors that I've just provided.
Thank you. I really want to just point out about my property, which is a fantastic website that property owners can use, and as elected officials, I'd highly encourage you recommending it because this is a secure, safe, self-serve portal for property owners to find out about their assessment. They can look at previous notices. They can look at neighboring properties to see if they're in the same market range. They can also learn about how to file a request for reconsideration. They can also look at videos if they wanted to take a couple of minutes of their time to learn about how we assess properties, how we assess farm properties, how property taxes are calculated, etc. It's a fabulous tool, and we do mention it because I like to point that as a first port of call if you get questions. Here's a bit of a pictorial. Remember I was showing you about market trends for farms. You can also look at any other market trends for any other property type across the province, so you can get an idea of what multi-residential properties would go for in Guelph if you wanted to. But again, we have a treasure trove of information, and I highly recommend using that. But if there are, again, further concerns at all, please do contact us. We're happy to take calls. We also have an office in Trenton, so please do visit us. If property owners are still not satisfied with the information, they can also file a request for reconsideration, which is a free service where MPAC is reviewing the value based on the information or maybe updated information we've received from a property owner, and that is a free service, but bear in mind that there are timelines every year to do that. And again, last resort is to file an appeal with the Assessment Review Board, which is an independent adjudicator, and there is a fee for that process. So we do have all of our contact information there, and please do not hesitate to give us a call or if you have any other questions. We'd like to thank you for your time today, and we hope that you found the information productive, helpful, and we'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you both very much. And I will open the floor to members of council for questions of clarification from the delegation. Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. So I've had some of my questions answered, as I've been probably a bugbear to some of our staff over the years regarding home-based business taxation. So thank you very much for clearing some of that out, and I'm glad that I'm in compliance.
Aren't we all? Councillor Tadman.
I'm glad you are too. And I don't have a business in my home at present. But anyways, quite impressed that Brighton is now worth 1.5 billion, assessed at 1.5 billion. We can feel we're rich whether we are or not. That's a lot of money, isn't it? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor LeBlanc.
When I was looking at the farmland, through you, Mayor, I was looking at the farmland, you said our farmland was class 2, class 3, hardly no class 1, right?
There's very little from my recollection of the percentages.
But when I gave a quick scan to your map, our increase has been 32%.
Yes, that was...
in land value compared to the next one, which was 39, and a lot of them have only gone up by 20%. So why is the value that's low class affecting Brighton that we've gone up by 32% in that short period of time?
Well, maybe that map was not as clear, but it's actually just market changes in those areas. It's not actually class land prices. Okay, so that's the key to that point. But we're talking about averages. So a property owner can have, let's say, 100 acres, but he'll have a mix of, 20 acres of class 2, class 3, and even some class 6. So it's all of those added together, and that's only the farmland. Remember, there's other components. If there's other structures, barns, silos, or do they have any commercial activity, or do they process anything? That might mean a commercial component or an industrial component, depending on the actual use. So there's a lot involved in farm valuation, and I have provided in the past to the Northumberland Agriculture Advisory Committee on a couple of occasions in more detail about how we assess in the market trends, and we get more into the nitty-gritty, and I'd be happy to provide some information to you later if you'd like.
The reason is because I own some farmland.
Okay.
So I see the increase, but I also see that you're going to increase if our taxes go up by 23% or 32%. It said that you're going to do it over a 5-year basis when impact comes and does an assessment. 4 years, because you go on a per market value as a current trend, and a lot of farmland is being sold here at that cost. So you're looking at substantial tax increase over a 4-year period. That's what I was looking at. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from members of council? I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Vink, seconded by Councillor Bateman. The council received the delegation from Catherine Barr, and if it's okay with the mover and seconder, I'd like to add from the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation. Is that okay? Is that okay? Any further discussion? All in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Our next delegation, thank you very much. Yeah, take care. Our next delegation is Nancy Penrose to address council regarding the Brighton off-leash recreation area for dogs. Nancy. And Nancy, our delegations do typically only have 10 minutes, and I will try to hold you to that. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Ostrander, members of council and staff. My name is Nancy Penrose. I am a director with the Social Pet Work. I'm also a member of Women for Humane Canada, and I'm an advocate for off-leash areas and parks. In October 2014, the Brighton Off-Leash Dog Recreation Area held its grand opening. This was a result of the generosity of local business owner and now councillor Doug LeBlanc and his wife Becky, the municipality of Brighton, local businesses, and a very dedicated group of volunteers. Over the next 5 years, many canine citizens and their humans enjoyed this facility. Sadly, the dog park must close due to the sale of the property, and the enrichment our dogs have enjoyed and the camaraderie and friendship made by their owners appear to be coming to an end. It is so important to create separate spaces for dogs in our parks so that everyone has the same opportunity to enjoy our parks and green spaces. It is a great venue for teaching others about proper dog etiquette, training, and socialization. They are safe and controlled environments and promote responsible pet ownership. One important factor that sets dog parks apart from other types of parks is that they are used year-round. They provide a unique opportunity for adult and family recreation at roughly half the cost of a traditional park for people. Many municipalities have repurposed land that would have otherwise gone unused or land that is underutilized. Our neighbors in Trenton, Belleville, and Cobourg have done just that. There are over 85 off-leash dog parks in Ontario, with approximately 10 parks in towns with a similar population to Brighton and 7 in communities smaller than Brighton. Our dog park has been a great place for owners to meet others with common interests. The devotion people share for their dogs reaches beyond economic and social barriers and has helped foster a sense of community. The dog park also provides a safe and accessible way for seniors and those with mobility issues to exercise their dogs and enjoy the social aspects of the off-leash park. The Canadian Animal Health Institute report published in January 2019 states that there are 8.2 million dogs in Canada, an increase of 65% from 2004. There can be no argument our pets are our family and we want to give them the best life. We have seen a huge increase in the availability of dog-friendly accommodations and vacation opportunities as pet owners want their dogs included in all aspects of their lives. Online directories have been established listing all types of pet-friendly locations. With this in mind, Brighton, as a tourist destination, would benefit greatly by having a facility where visitors and residents alike could utilize a leash-free park. TripAdvisor reviews for dog parks located in Cobourg, Trenton, and Belleville indicate this is very important to visitors in the area. Review comments such as "amazing," "will certainly be back when I'm in the area," awesome dog park. What a find. Clean, well-maintained. Always a stop on our way east. This is a true testament to the value a dog park adds to a community and its visitors. We are appealing to the generosity of private citizens and the town of Brighton to ensure this valuable asset remains in Brighton. Paramount in all of this is the commitment of the dog owners themselves to become involved and ensure a dog park remains a success. We are looking for an interim location until a permanent location can be found, with the ultimate goal to establish a permanent off-leash park. The Brighton Dog Park Committee and communication team would work with the municipality to meet this goal. The objective would be to provide a framework for planning, design, construction, operation, regulation, funding, management, and community involvement in a public leash-free facility. Partnerships are required to support the establishment of a permanent location. The principles would be self-sustainability, maintaining public and animal safety, minimization of environmental impacts, community partnerships to support the creation of the park, partnerships to support the ongoing operation, a funding model to support the development and maintenance, and lastly, performance measures to monitor and evaluate the conditions and operation. Within days, our park will close. Can we look to council to support us with a temporary location and work with us moving forward to develop a permanent off-leash park? And just to mention that we have so far petitions with 222 signatures. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. And just before I open the floor to questions from members of council for clarification purposes, I will note that staff have advised me that the municipality is seeking legal advice on the what we can expect or not with our agreement with the that's associated with the existing land. So I just thought I'd let you know that we don't have that advice. Advice has not come back to us, but we are seeking it just to see if we can. Well, we'll see what we see moving forward. I'll open the floor to members of council for questions of clarification. Councillor Tadman.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, Linda is our financial director. There is money still owing from the original contract. Is that correct?
I think we wrote it off.
The existing agreement with Boldra has expired.
Okay.
And we did have to write off a majority of the loan.
And do you remember a ballpark figure how much that was?
More than 15,000.
Yeah. Right. I'm not in any way trying to discourage you, but that was a contract that was agreed upon, and that wasn't paid for. But on the other hand, I wanted to also say we've had a lot of problems in Proctor Park with dogs that are running loose and knocking people over and biting, and the same Presqu'île's not allowed. So you're limited unless you have a big yard and a big fence. So I agree that you need something here. I just hope that this time we could, the contract we have with Boulder, or whatever we want to call it next time, will be so that everybody, like people that don't have dogs don't necessarily want to write off $15,000.
Absolutely.
And you can understand that. And there was an agreement that there would be door-to-door sales of the licenses. And I've had people say to me, one person said to me, I got a cat, are you going to build me a cat park? It's an argument, isn't it?
Yep. I don't have children in school, but I still pay for schools.
Yeah, and so does this person. So, no, yeah, and that's the way it goes. Sure. And people can come up with all kinds of arguments. I would support this fully, and I did before, but I think we need to be firm on how we move forward.
And before we do anything, I think we should get the legal advice that staff is soliciting with regard to the existing property.
Yes.
Yeah. Any other questions of clarification from members of council? Councillor LeBlanc?
Well, since I know that the town council now is probably going to sue me, But anyway, how the dog park started, the council, they wanted to know if there was an appetite to have a dog park. And the council at the time approached me to build a dog park and put onto it. I did donate land to the town and donate money. The land was there to see if the dog park was required for this town and if the town should require their own land and build their own dog park. After working there and seeing all the people that went there, and it became their life, their home, people going 3 times a day and meeting the citizens and talking and seeing the dogs play with one another all the time. Yes, I think the town needs a dog park. And when I found out I sold the property, there was 3 owners. One was in favor of it. Unfortunately, they bought him out. I got caught between the 2 eyes, and I apologize for that. But the thing is, I have been looking for an alternative place for a dog park. I still own property, but this time I would make sure that the dog parks own it, and the land, and the town would own the land. My wife has been generous to also help out, and the new owner of the property would like to help out too. But well, first of all, I got to wait to see what the town does with me, because it may end up by being quite a battle on this. Because as long as I own the land, the dog park would have stayed there. But paying $30,000 a year for taxes for a business that I've sold that wasn't there anymore, it wasn't feasible, and to pass it on to create jobs. And it's for that, I'm sorry about the dog owners that couldn't go there, but I have been looking actively for another piece of property with Tom Richards, and I've also met with some of the people on your committee to help them out. I understand about cats. Cats don't play well with one another, and they don't stay there. Okay? But I lost Pepper, which was part of him, was very close to my wife and I that he went, and he died. Unfortunately, he dies of cancer. I wish I could keep on doing it. The dog park. I talked to GFL, the landowner right across the street. They've gone and they started hedging. They said they would like to help. I own property 100 yards down the road. I would also help there. But this time I think you should own it. And the town should own it. It shouldn't be leased and nothing to his product. I didn't know it was going to get to that, but I will defend myself vigorously. Nothing you well know. But even with that, I'm there to help all the dog owners because I have 3 of them my own. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Anderson?
Rather than go backwards on all the detail from the past and all that, and I followed it, and I had my dog down there too, and for a number of times, and I think it's the municipality's responsibility now in this day and age to take it on, and we be asking people to come forward and there should be fundraising, there should be responsibility, there should be all those things, a good committee, and you've been a good committee down there to make things happen, and the volunteers have been great, and the LeBlancs have been great, absolutely. But moving forward, I think the municipality needs to take this on, and I'd be anxious to hear what our legal advice is going forward and where we feel comfortable legally to do whatever we have to. But there must be some land that our municipality can come up with or can find, or there must be even a group with it, or not a group, an individual in the community that may, as the LeBlancs have done, maybe someone else will come forward. But I think we need to take the leadership in this time around, instead of leaving it all up to you folks.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. So we will, of course, wait to hear what our solicitor has to say with regard to the existing agreement and then move forward. And I'm certainly hearing that members of council seem to be in favor of going down this road if that becomes necessary. So we'll wait to see. To speak to the land inventory issue, it's a discussion that we've had, a number of us have had around the table. The municipality does not own a lot of vacant lands, so we would be looking at acquiring something, and sometimes that's not always popular to do, but I'm hearing that this council may want to go down that road for this purpose. We'll have to wait and see what tomorrow brings, frankly. Okay, thank you very much. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that council receive the delegation from Nancy Penrose, and if it's the mover and seconder are okay, I'd like to add regarding the Brighton off-leash dog park. Are you okay with that, Councillor LeBlanc? Councillor Rowley? Is there any discussion? All in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried. I don't know either. So I have Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to carry on with the council meeting. If you are leaving, could you please do so quietly? So I do have one citizen's comment this evening. It is from Rhonda Moran with regard to the dog park situation. Rhonda, if you're here, do you wish to make comment, or were your comments captured by the delegation? So you can come forward. I think you have 3 minutes. I think this is the first citizen's comment we've had this term of council. You have 2 minutes. You have 2 minutes. There you go. There's another one in the basket. That's welcome.
Hi, my name is Rhonda Moran. I live at 11 Cove Crescent. I am not a public speaker, so please bear with me. There's a lot of people here tonight showing how much we enjoy our current dog park along with our pets. And we really want to go to another place where we can enjoy the same. My story about why I go to the dog park is a little different. My husband was diagnosed with PCA 8 years ago. It is basically the degeneration of the back of the brain. During the course of his illness, we were lucky enough to qualify for a certified service dog. That's where Norway came into our life. He's a Labrador Retriever, and if you see the black fur on my clothes, you can tell he's a black lab. I can't tell you how much my husband, myself, and Norway enjoyed coming to the dog park. At one time when Steve needed assistance to walk, we would walk around the perimeter of the park. We found it to be a great place for dogs to play with each other, and we enjoyed being with the other people who love dogs. Unfortunately, my husband died a year ago at age 59. My whole world changed. Some days taking Norway to the dog park is my only motivation to get out of the house. I love watching Norway play with the other dogs. Some days, it's my only contact with the outside world. I have made some great friends there, and I immensely enjoy getting to know the other dog owners. So you see, the dog park isn't only for dogs, it's for the people who take their dogs there too. Just an aside, FYI, last Friday night, there was 15 dogs at the dog park around 7:30. It's a joy to watch the dogs play. It's very entertaining. Another night, a lady at the park was telling me about certain dog food that have been taken off the market. The dog park is a place to share information. In July, I met a couple from Nova Scotia who were camping at the KOA north of Brighton. They were there at least 2 nights that I know of. I've gone on too long, but thanks for listening to me. I'd just like to leave you with a couple thoughts. A dog park is so much more than a place for dogs. It's a place to share information, a place to take a dog when you're away from home, and it's also a nice community. I would also like to formally thank Doug LeBlanc and his wife for donating the land. I'm not sure how long it's been there, but I know I've been involved with it for 2 or 3 years, and I'd just like to thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Moran, and our condolences on your loss. Thank you. I have received a folder, but it doesn't have a citizen's comment form, so I'm wondering if you and I can have a chat off like another time about this, and then maybe bring it to council as a delegation. There's just an awful lot of information for a citizen's comment, that's all.
I have a 4.5 minute presentation.
So that...
Part of
Okay, so that would not constitute a citizen's comment if it's more than 2 minutes. So maybe you and I can have a chat in the next... What's the deadline? Okay, so there's lots of time for you to bring a delegation. Good idea. Yeah, thank you. So can I have a motion that council receive the citizens' comments? Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Tadman. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. Moving into staff reports. Our first report is with regard to the Curling Club roof replacement tender report. And Mr. Miller, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
No, not at this time. It's pretty complete there.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley. The council award the contract for tender number REC 2019-09, the replacement of the roof at the Brighton Curling Club building to Perfect Choice Roofing of Brighton, Ontario for the before-tax bid price of $29,800 and authorize the remaining $7,350 municipal portion to be taken from the contingency reserve account. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Go ahead, Councillor Anderson. Could you put your microphone on, sir?
How soon would this get going and be completed? I haven't read that in here.
Mr. Miller?
At the time of the tender opening, the date was September 30th. Now it's been almost a month, so we'll see. But I'm pretty confident it'll be done
this year.
Well before, yeah, this year, well before freezing.
Before the bad stuff.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Our next report is with regard to Physician Recruitment Partnership Program. Mr. Castleman, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
I do not.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley. The council authorized the mayor and clerk to execute a partnership agreement between the municipality of Brighton and the Quinte West Physician Recruitment Program as depicted in the attachment appended hereto. Is there any discussion? Councillor Rowley.
Is this just something that was missed when we approved this earlier?
It was approved in budget, but we had no official agreement between the recruiter and the municipality.
Okay,
that's all.
so that's what this is cleared
This is the
up.
official, this is the official contract, if you will.
Thank you.
Any further questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. The next report is with regard to the sign control bylaw. Mr. McGee, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to highlight just a couple things. Basically, allowing more time is a benefit to new businesses. Also promoting local not-for-profit organizations and community organizations. We've had like Career Edge, MAD, the Vocalese Choir, Brighton Barn, Dragon Boat Club use these signs to advertise their events. And we just have a couple pharmacies that are using the signs at the moment to advertise. A new pharmacy and one that advertises their current in-store specials. As well, the municipality of Brighton has used them to inform residents and visitors to Brighton about the use of ATVs or winter restrictions. Just want to point out that they're on the lot of the business. I know we've seen some issues within the Quinte area with them being everywhere. Sometimes they're placed in a town that the business is not in to advertise their business. And the volunteer or the not-for-profit have been put on designated municipal areas. So basically, businesses can now, if this bylaw is passed, they can have their sign up for 3 months up, 1 month down, still kind of classing as a temporary sign. And a not-for-profit or community organization can have it up 6 times a year, but only at a 30-minute or 30-day period at a time.
Thank you, Mr. McGee. Any questions from members of council? Oh, let me read the motion first. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, that council receives the report dated August 12th, 2019 to amend and update the sign control bylaw 143/2003, being a bylaw to regulate signs and other advertising devices in the municipality of Brighton, and that council authorizes the approval and execution of the amending sign control bylaw as outlined in schedule number 2 attached here to. Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, I just had one question when I was reviewing the section. I don't know if we have, I would like to defer the one section. I don't know if you have to defer the whole thing. It's under section 2.12, the sandwich board signs. I'm in favor of that. I know they are effective. But if you look at 2.1D, it's talking about the use on the sidewalks, and it can't take up more than, correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, is it 1/3 the space? I would like to have the accessibility committee, because all our sidewalks, we have different sidewalks, different widths. Some sidewalks, will that leave enough space for somebody with a mobility device or a stroller, whatever the case may be? I'd hate to put something in place and then have it come back at us, just that one section. Some sidewalks are probably perfectly fine, but are they all for the space permitted?
So before we put a motion on the floor to defer or refer, I'm going to have conversation, debate, and discussion around this, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Bateman, if that's all right. Councillor Rowley.
My own question for now.
Thank you. Councillor Tadman.
Through you, Mayor, and to what Councillor Bateman's saying, we've had a lot of problems in the past with signs, and especially in the wintertime, for the sidewalk plow, but also people that need to ride the motorized ones, they need that extra room, and there's hardly a sidewalk in Brighton that's wide enough to have a sign in those. So I think we need to reconsider what Councillor Bateman's brought up.
Mr. McGee, do you have any comment with regard to the sandwich boards on the sidewalks?
Yes, you're reading it from the parent bylaw. I'm bringing a amended bylaw just for portable signs only. So if we want to, I guess, pass a resolution for staff to look into sandwich board signs, and but the sign bylaw is actually derived from the building code, so it would require a public process and public input. It's just not a change by staff. I have in 2015 did a request to council. I met a gentleman, Justin Thompson, who's in the electric cart, and we did go downtown, and he kind of gave me the advice of when it's going to be an obstruction to him. It says either you keep it close to the building or close to the curb, but signs that are in the middle in the sidewalk, that's when it becomes a hazard or makes it hard for them to maneuver downtown.
So, Mr. McGee, you're going to bring a separate bylaw. Is that what I heard you say? A separate bylaw with regard to sandwich board signs forward?
I would have to look at the process for amending the parent bylaw for sandwich board signs, because I can't do that change. We would have to have a public meeting with public input, because it's going to affect a lot of people, especially the downtown core who utilizes them.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tadman.
Thank you, Mayor. But once again, if you think about it, the south side of Main Street is a lot wider, the sidewalk, than the north side. And there's lots of times when I've noticed people, even with walkers, are struggling to get by the sandwich board signs. So there's other places that they can put them, and I think that we have to be very cognizant of the fact that people with any kind of disabilities need to have, the proper area to be mobile. So I think maybe we need to look it all over once again.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that tonight we are looking at updating and clarifying the definition of portable signs, but we're not necessarily talking about where they're placed, right? So is that correct?
Mr. McGee?
So signs for businesses are on private property, and the signs for the not-for-profit have been on municipal property, which has been a common practice in the past.
Municipal property.
Yeah. Down at King Edward, we had them on our property before the electric sign. So, any business has to be on private property, and there's a sight triangles where they can't, block the view of traffic or pedestrian traffic. So there's several rules with that.
And that's what we're updating here tonight on.
Yeah, basically the changes in the bylaw are the definition, because it needed a more defined definition, and the timeline, basically right now it's 1 month up and 3 months down. So I was looking to have that extended the 3 months or the 1 month, 6 times a month for a nonprofit. But with a very subtle change, and even the, I don't know where I record it. The back. Apologize for this. I should. And basically, right now the bylaw does dictate the fees. We no longer do that, so we're removing the fees from the bylaw just because I've had people pay $15 when it's $30, so it will be confusion. And the penalties as well. Right now, the general fees in charge of bylaw says, if it's erected without a sign permit, it's double cost. So we're putting that in the bylaw. So it's a very subtle change, all basically just extending the time for these signs to be up. And they're hardly used. I mean, so it's not like it's going to pop up everywhere like Sign Village.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. What I'm trying to say is the issues that we're talking about is not actually new. It's existing, correct? So we're not approving a change to that tonight. If we want to change it at one point, then we need to bring it up at another time, because this is addressing these portable signs and these other issues that you've just talked about, not those signs downtown.
And I think the Accessibility Committee could probably review any bylaws for accessibility issues at any time, and I would suggest that after tonight you might want to put that on your agenda. Go ahead.
We do it constantly, and that's something that we have to come back to the bylaw officer to make sure, especially in the wintertime, it's a real problem.
But either way, by passing this tonight, we're not changing or... So
Call the vote.
Yeah. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. Next report is with regard to rate of speed bylaw. Mr. McGee, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just highlight, so this is one bylaw to cover all the rate of speed bylaws. And so we're amalgamating the current roads with reduction in speed into one bylaw. Staff has not created any new reduction in speed.
This is just a matter of amalgamating all of those bylaws that have been previously passed.
That's correct.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
So I'm just confirming, we're not changing any speeds. Those are 40, we're not changing them to 50, we're just amalgamating the bylaw.
There is one that I'm changing. It's Bayshore Road. And that's because of when you do a start and end point, you go 40 through the park and then you end up 50 and then you end up 40. So it gets, you have to basically pin it down to the meter for enforcement. So Bayshore has been changed to all of 40 for...
So 40 from the beginning of the residential area to the point.
Yeah, the Presqu'île Parkway all the way to...
I suspect that will make the residents quite happy, yeah. Councillor Anderson.
I think you have one more too that you overlooked. When we did the Smithfield area, Smith Street, we put a community safety zone in there, which was excellent and well received. But you put 50K speed limit in a safety zone. Why is it 40 in other safety zones, and why is it 40 on other streets where that safety zone is 50? I think and when I understood that we didn't have signs at the time, so we put the 50 there. So you go from 40 to 50 to 60 in a short in Smithfield. Now that you have the 50 in the safety zone by the school zone. So it doesn't make any sense to me, and I think we discussed it.
They were all existing. Like I said, I explained why I did Bayshore Road. It's based on just setting up your start and finish, but I wasn't toying around what I thought or if we have a school zone. Yeah, some school zones are 40, some are 50. Yeah, Drury Street is 40, and like Council knows, Drury is one of the worst roads for speeding right now.
Well, I tell you, the whole community is, and I don't want to go there yet, because I know you've got you're doing a lot of testing around the community municipality right now with the, what do you call them, the squirrels or whatever? You got
Black
a lot of-
cats.
Oh, the
Black cats, a lot of them.
I think if we came back.
We have squirrels in Smithfield, you have black cats everywhere else, but anyhow, I think it's great, and I was talking, today I had a lengthy discussion with the OPP regarding speeds and speeding and racing and even trick riding now on ATVs. So we had this discussion this morning, we talked about speeds. It's and I know the public has been contacting me about this too. Our speed limits are sort of all over the place. And if you look at, I use Trent Hills again, I'm bringing it up again, where they just make it's 50 unless otherwise posted. And it sort of takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. Right now you got 40 to 50 to 60. You're in a school zone or near a school. Okay, only yards from a school is 50. That doesn't make any sense to me. And I think we need some crosswalk markings like we discussed earlier this year. So that's why I'm bringing it up now, and that's why I'm concerned that we're overlooking something, because you've got a document here that we're going to put in place, and we're missing the boat on. And you missed the boat on not you. I'm sorry.
I don't have the authority to change speeds. I know it is a 50 right now, and I did put into the report that we should look at this annually.
Did.
I mean, back when school starts, once this bylaw passed, those black cats will be back up in Smithfield. We'll get the data, and I'll happy to share that with council to show the speeds that are currently being driven.
We can do that, or we can talk to the police services board and the police, because today they were chasing them all over the place. So I think we need to address this speed thing going on.
Just a reminder that this is it's about amalgamating a bunch of bylaws together,
I know,
and we can have the discussion about what to change at another meeting of council.
Can we not discuss the change? Because we're talking the change about Bayshore tonight. Why can't we talk the change about another area?
I don't think I've stopped you from talking about the change. We have done that. I'm just reminding everyone that this is an amalgamation with one change.
Okay.
Yeah. But, I mean, say what you need to say.
It's amalgamation with two changes. That's all I'm suggesting, and the residents are suggesting that too. They're asking me to ask that without coming forth with a petition.
Then you would be wise to bring a notice of motion to the next meeting of council for a rate of speed change on Smith Street, I think is what you're aiming at.
In the safety zone or expanded safety zone.
But if you bring a notice of motion, you have a seconder for that. The clerk will put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay, so that's more convenient for everybody. I'll do that.
Thank you. Councillor Tadman, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was going to say, why don't we just call the vote since it's amalgamated?
Thank you, Councillor Tadman. Deputy Mayor, did you have a comment? Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Our final staff. Deputy Clerk.
Yes, before we move on, I just want to point out that I do notice our bylaw enforcement officer has included a bylaw as part of his report, but that has not been drawn down into section 12 for bylaws. So if we want to pass that tonight, we should add that bylaw, at least for the signs. And I'm not sure, is there also one regarding speed in here? So that would be two to add under section 12 then.
Thank you. And I've clicked off the thing, but are the bylaws included in the staff report? I can't flip down.
I see that one is included in the staff report, but I don't see the one for speed.
Okay, so perhaps we could bring the one for the speed amalgamations to the next meeting if it's not here. Let me just check.
It was part of the whole report. I don't know how it went missing.
Do you see it there?
No. In fairness, Alan, it's a 52-page report. So. Give me a sec. So it doesn't, if it's in the middle somewhere, I can't find it, but it doesn't follow your report, and the final page is a bylaw from 1973. So, when Mrs. Britnell was the reeve of the municipality. So that was some time ago. So I'm going to suggest we will pass the motion. We've already passed the motion. You can provide the clerk's office with the bylaw for the next meeting of council. Okay, thank you. But we will add the sign control bylaw, which was included in the report, to 12.5. 12.4. And Deputy Clerk, I'll just need a motion when the time comes, if you will. Thank you. All right, procurement bylaw. Mr. Councilman, we have read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
I do not. It's actually not my report. It's Linda's report. Perhaps she has some comments.
Mrs. Whitfield, I apologize. I had a glare. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
I do not.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, that Council approve the procurement policy and adopt the procurement policy bylaw. Is there any discussion? Councillor LeBlanc.
Through you, Mayor, for Linda Whitfield. When you say in this figure, it's on page 28, Annex 4, Delegated Authorities. You say in there in the bottom that all procurements and these things are done as long as the money is approved by council. But also, when you go to Annex, just wait a minute, Annex 3, Para 1, for all procedures, projects of procurement with values of 25,000 or greater, which you use greater, you don't have in those from 1 to 2.c, the thing that the funds have to be approved by council.
So Appendix 3 is just the circumstances for non-standard procurement, but all of the delegated authorities are found under Appendix 4, and that rules the delegated authority for the entire purchasing policy. So council has to pass a budget that before we spend money, before we let any contracts out. And once that budget is passed, we can only spend within that budget. And we have to bring reports to council if the delegated, or if the approval amount is above the 100,000, which is the delegated authority of the CAO through this policy. So if we had brushing to do and we had $80,000 in the budget to do brushing, Preston would set up his program for brushing. He would take it, he would discuss it with the CAO, and then the approval process would happen through the appropriate forms in our policy. And it would not come to council. If they were going to purchase a grader at $350,000 and it was approved in the budget, it still has to come to council because it's over $100,000. So no matter what it says anywhere in this bylaw, the delegated authority is the delegated authority. And then if there's an emergency and it's not budgeted, there's some parameters put around that within the policy as well. So all council's doing by passing a purchasing policy is providing the rules and the guidance for staff on how we will conduct our procurement processes, and at what point the authority to approve that stops for staff and starts again for council.
And can you just highlight the change from what is today to what will be if we pass this?
At present, the CAO has the authority to approve projects and expenditures up to $25,000 as long as it's within the approved budget. We are recommending that go to $100,000. Each director right now has $5,000. We're recommending that go to $25,000. And supervisors have $1,000, and we're recommending that go to $5,000. And that's essentially the changes in the delegated authority.
And of course, this is this is all about, council passes a budget, we approve, expenditures for the municipality, and then we find out that everything has to come back to council to approve again once bids are let, even those items that are what seems, unfortunately, in today's day and age, as small amounts.
That's correct, and not only that, but this will provide staff with a little bit more. We'll be able to move a little quicker.
That's right.
Not have to wait for the next council meeting to have a report approved by council when it's already been approved in the budget and we're within that.
Because of course we all remember that we had a brushing program and we had to wait to pay for that brushing program because of the bylaw didn't have the flexibility that this new bylaw would provide.
You're absolutely correct.
Thank you. Councillor Rowley.
Thank you. I just want to go back to the $350,000 grader that you brought up as an example. If we have approved that, and as long as Mr. Parkinson's tenders come in under the $350,000, should he not be able to just go and does he need to have to come back again? Some of these kind of things are time sensitive as well. I mean, that grader could go up in cost by 10% by the time he brings it back to council or whatever.
It wouldn't, because the tender document would freeze the price, right? Like once you bid on something as a private contractor to a municipality or any government, we have X number of days to make our decision, and there's no penalty to the municipality to provide a process for that. If we take too long, then for sure, but that's a different story. At the end of the day, $100,000 is significantly higher.
It is significantly
higher than what we had been allowing in the past. How long had those spending authorities been in place?
I'm not sure how long the spending authorities were in place, but the current bylaw has been in place since 2006, so it's antiquated at this point for sure.
13 years old. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I guess as long as staff is satisfied with this working, then I guess I'm all right.
They've recommended it, so I think they're probably okay with it. Councillor Tadman?
I think it's an excellent idea. Can we call the vote?
As long as there aren't any more questions. Any other questions from members of council? Councillor LeBlanc?
People maybe have misunderstood me. I'm in favor of this. But I also think that the guy from whoever's in charge, Director of Public Works, shouldn't be $25,000, should be $50,000 because of all the work and the projects he done. And the Director of Wastewater and Water, instead of being $5,000, should be $10,000 to give them more flexibility and speed of doing their job. And I understand that the CEO has $100,000. I think that's a bit short, but it's a long ways from $25,000. And I like that you put in there for standard offers and agreement that we can go into paper, get quotes, and get material, equipment, and manpower so we can use on an emergency basis. I like that it's all in here. So maybe it was misdone, but I think the Director of Public Works should have 50, and wastewater and water should have 10. I don't know, and I don't know if that's interfering with staff, but that's why I think to make things easy and more accessible.
So if the Director of Public Works has an item that's $26,000, he could take it to the CAO for the authority to make that expenditure without coming to council, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So it doesn't have to come to council, it goes to the CAO. We're talking hours instead of weeks, right? A phone call, yeah. Yeah, I assume there would be some process of signing off, but an email probably would do fine in today's day and age. Anyway, Councillor Tadman.
I was going to say what you just said, so aren't we smart together?
Aren't we smart together? Isn't that wonderful? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. So there are motions to be read, but I don't have forms. Are they signed? As long as your names are on them, you can sign them later. Not by me, sir. Not by me. So I have a motion. So we're moving into notices of motion and motions, and these are all now motions. They were read as notices of motion at the last meeting. So moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Bateman. The council directs staff to brushing and tree removal at roadway intersections for improved field of view and safety, approval of spending of up to $120,000, recommended brushing locations by staff, and work to be completed by December 1st, 2019. Councillor LeBlanc, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, I shouldn't have used the word direct because it's my first motion, so I'm learning. So everywhere you see direct on my motions, it should be removed. It should be asking advice from council and staff. Basically, if we need more brushing, because when I looked at the budgets back to 2012, there was money set aside all those years but 2018 and into reserves. I don't know if there is any reserve for brushing left anymore or where it went to. But this year we're going to have trees, arbors. I've looked at our trees. I happened to meet them on my walk. There could be possibly up to $40,000 spent on tree removal this year or less, or no money at all. And we need brushing because people don't have accessibility to to where they see. It's just brought up to see for discussion, to see if you want to do it this year or you can put it off to next year.
Thank you, Councillor LeBlanc. So we had a brief discussion, you and I, about turning these bullet points into actual statements that we could debate, and I'm wondering if we can somehow do that. But you want to refer this to staff?
Yes.
You okay with that, Councillor Bateman, if we change that council directs staff to, we refer it to staff for?
No debate.
No debate.
No, it's a motion to refer.
Let them come back. Put it into their hands.
So the council refer 1, 2, 3, 4 to staff.
Yep.
For a report? For discussion? For what? For a report?
For a report. They want it needs to be done.
All those in favor? Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I actually came prepared to discuss it tonight, if we want to address this matter, or it's up to council, but just wanted to inform you, that's all.
Well, we've already have a motion on the floor to refer,
Yeah.
so
So we'll refer it to you. You can bring a report to council at the next meeting or whenever. I mean, if you have the work together now, might as well be to the next meeting because it's already done. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion is carried. The next motion is moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that, and we'll have to change this, I guess, that council directs staff to designated staff by law enforcement officers reviews with Codrington Pit Operation Management that all truck vehicles are adhering to the transportation routes as stipulated in the agreement of operation. Councillor LeBlanc, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, that was brought up at the rural committee meeting by citizens that were there, that a lot of the trucks that are going to the gravel pit that should be taking up the designated route right straight up from the 401 to the gravel pit, when they're coming from the east, are taking shortcuts through Willow Road and some of our gravel roads to get there. And that they should be using the designated route because it's wrecking our roads and wrecking our routes. Also, some of our truckers still use those routes to go to gravel pits, but they're not getting the gravel from Codrington where the pit was. That came up at the rural committee meeting from the citizens.
So do we have an agreement of operations with the gravel pit?
Yes.
And the municipality? We do? And that's enforceable by the municipality? Okay. Deputy Mayor?
I'm just curious, if it's been discussed at a rural committee, should it not be minuted and then come to council through those minutes?
It should come as a recommendation from the committee of council.
From that committee?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we decided that I would bring it up as a motion.
Okay, it should be a motion in future. It should be a motion passed at the Rural Advisory Committee, making a recommendation to council. So in the future, we can deal with it through those minutes. Councillor Tadman?
I'm pretty sure you were on council, I believe, at the time, maybe not. But anyways, there was a designated road for that gravel pit, and they're supposed to stick to that road. So I think we need to go back and look at the actual agreement, and also then get in touch with the, what are they called out there?
CBM St. Mary.
CBM, yeah.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. At this point, then, can we ask for a report from staff on that as well, so that we can decide what we need to do?
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
You okay with that, Councillor Bateman? So I've added the line and refer to staff for advice and a report. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Why am I missing? There should be more, right? No, I see I've got 51. It's okay. I'm good. 10-3, moved by Councillor LeBlanc. Oh, this one was removed. .4, moved by Councillor LeBlanc, second by Councillor Bateman, that council direct staff to prepare a report that is a cost-benefit review of a new fire hall rental versus ownership. I believe this would happen anyway, but I'll let you speak to your motion. Go ahead.
Okay. So what it is, a bit poorly written, but the thing is, the gist of it was, do we get the county to build us a fire hall, or do we own our own fire hall? And all I wanted was for staff to prepare a report or to do a review to look at it, because next year we got to look at where our fire hall is going to be. We got to buy land or look at land, and if we're going to build one or not build one, because apparently we're due for next year or the year after. So I just wanted to get pre-prepared.
Would staff not consider a rental versus ownership concept and a cost-benefit analysis in the process, Mr. Castleman?
Through you, in the normal course, we look at various options, whether it would be lease or buy. So obviously, we're going to do a cost analysis associated with that and bring a recommendation for your consideration in the future.
Can I ask you to withdraw your motion?
I will withdraw my motion.
Thank you. .5, moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that council directs staff to downtown painting and roadway marking, 1, painting of curbs, park lines, and designated handicap spaces, repainting roadway center lines, stop lines, crosswalks, 3, approval of spending of up to $120,000, and 4, work to be completed by September 15, 2019. Councillor LeBlanc, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, it should be looked at, because some of the lines and some of the painting hasn't been done since the engineer Jim Phillip was here. When I looked down, the curbs have been done, accessibility, the paint, basically they painted some, but there must be different colors of white. Our crosswalk, they painted them last year, the paint's gone within about 3 months after they paint them. So we gotta look at them and paint them and get stuff done. And when I talked to the director of roads and ground, we were on the bus, he told me it wasn't in the budget, then he says then I found out later on it is. It's an annual thing, but if it's an annual thing, how come some of it hasn't been done in 9 years?
I can't speak to the 9 years, and I'm not sure what of that is accurate or not. Mr. Parkinson, can you speak to our line painting tender or the partnership we have with the county, please?
Yes, through your worship. There's 2 different portions to our line painting. The line painting on the roads, White's Road, Telephone, any roads. That's done through the county. We partnership with their line painting tender, and they're supposed to be done this week. All the urban, the symbols, the stop bars, and the parking space lines, and the hash marks, we do that in-house with our own staff. And it's underway right now. We're probably about 70% complete with that now.
Shall we withdraw this one as well?
Are you guys satisfied with what's being done? If it is, withdraw it.
Well, it isn't done yet. It's being completed over the course of the next couple of weeks, I understand. Is that
That's
true?
right. Yep.
Are you also doing the yellow curbs?
Well, I'm having conversations, and I need to speak to the accessibility committee before we determine whether or not we're going to paint those again.
They were the last ones the last time they were done was with the engineer, which was Phillips, the last time they were painted yellow.
Councillor
That's
Tadman.
what was reported to me.
Councillor Tadman.
Thank you. Well, there's certain recommendations through the CNIB that helps people that have vision problems, and that's all laid out. And we have a manual that says why they should be painted yellow. So Nicole Van Rieswick would have that manual, or there must be another copy at the municipality. But it's also online in AODA too, so you could check with that. But I think if you want to bring it up at the accessibility meeting, that's not till, when is that? Sometime near the end of September, I think. Whichever way you want to go. I can give you Nicole. She would have the manual, but I'm sure there has to be one in the municipality and Public Works up here and down there, because it's supplied to all municipalities.
But it is your intention to seek advice from either AODA, the accessibility document, or the committee?
Yeah, I was trying to get a consensus between the BIA and the accessibility committee before we go, because it is a large visual thing as well. So I just wanted to make sure all parties were on board before we proceeded with it, because it has been, 6-7 years since the last time it was painted, so.
Any further discussion on this? Are we carrying forward?
Yes. Let's have a recorded vote.
May I make a comment?
Deputy Clerk, the Councillor LeBlanc has called a recorded vote. Under the procedural bylaw, a recorded vote is requested in alphabetical order, starting with the councillor who called the vote.
Yeah.
Mayor? Yeah. I'm just looking for some clarification as to exactly what I'm voting on. Thank you.
I can read the motion again if you'd like, Deputy Clerk, before you call the vote.
I could try to read it.
So it is moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that council directs staff to downtown painting and roadway marking. 1, painting of curbs, parking lines, and designated handicap spaces. 2, repainting roadway center lines, stop lines, crosswalks. 3, approval of spending of up to $120,000. And 4, work to be completed by September 15th, 2019. The vote's been called, Councillor Bateman, I'm sorry. Starting with Councillor LeBlanc.
Councillor LeBlanc, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Councillor Riley, how do you vote?
I vote no.
Councillor Tadman, how do you vote?
No, but I will explain to Councillor, what's your name? LeBlanc. Later. Go on.
Deputy Mayor Vink, how do you vote?
No.
Councillor Anderson, how do you vote?
No.
Councillor Bateman, how do you vote?
I have to say no, because I want it to come to accessibility first.
Mayor Ostrander, how do you vote?
No.
This is defeated.
Thank you. Our final motion this evening is Moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that council directs staff to report on the pet waste stations feasibility. 1, benefits of pet waste stations. 2, recommended waste bag material. 3, recommended locations within the municipality. 4, acquisitions and installation costs per pet waste station. And 5, installation timing. Councillor LeBlanc. Would you like to speak to your motion, please?
Oh, withdraw it.
The motion's withdrawn. Thank you. There's nothing under unfinished business. We'll move into bylaws. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to establish a rural broadband internet committee. Is there any discussion? Councillor Rowley.
No discussion on the bylaw. Do we have a committee in place, or will this be the beginning of creating a committee?
We have appointed 2 members of council to the committee, and this will spark the need to advertise for citizens.
That's my understanding. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and the CAO to enter into an agreement on behalf of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton with Drain Brothers Excavating Limited of Norwood, Ontario, to complete asphalt work on behalf of the municipality as described in documents contained in tender REC 2019-07. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date. Being a bylaw established to regulate the purchase of goods and services by various departments of the municipality in accordance with the procurement policy attached hereto. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. Thank you. So I will need a mover and a seconder. That council passes a bylaw, being a bylaw to amend and update Bylaw 143-2003, a bylaw to regulate signs and other advertising devices in the corporation of the municipality of Brighton. Moved by Councillor Tadman, seconded by Deputy Mayor Vink. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. There are no reports of advisory committees of council. There are no reports or minutes of statutory committees, boards, or external agencies, so we'll move into correspondence. And I will need a motion that council support Rail Safety Week. Moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman. Is there any discussion? Councillor Rowley.
Thank you. I'm all for rail safety. I'm also for proper railway crossings. Taking your life in your hands just driving across the Prince Edward Street crossing, I don't know if we can convey any kind of message to both CN isn't as bad as CP, but if we're talking about injury to life and limb and damages caused, I think we need to get these guys a little bit more accountable as to how those crossings look. Thank you.
Thank you, and I understand there was a near incident today. Councillor Bateman.
No, I was just going to echo that, and I would look to my right, and I'm sure at the end somebody would probably comment on this. No, it would have to come at the end, because I was reading that too. There was a near miss where the truck was almost hit and the guardrail was taken out. So.
Mrs. Richardson can be very creative and make her comment in the form of a question, I'm sure. Is there any further discussion on that? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. I I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, that council support the resolution recommending the International Joint Commission plan be rescinded. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, that council support an investigation into the flooding events that affected communities along the shoreline of Lake Ontario. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. And finally, under correspondence, I have a motion moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that council receives the road use special event application from 2019 Highway of Heroes Ride, August 24th as information. Actually, I think we should probably approve the road closure, right? So Councillors Anderson and Bateman, I've added and approve the road closure. You're okay with that? Any further discussion? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion is carried.
Do we participate in that at all?
I don't believe so, but let's read it. It appears to be an event conducted by the Wounded Warriors, and they just need access to the roadway through the municipality, as I read the correspondence. There's no FYI correspondence. I will open the floor to questions from members of the public if they have any questions with regard to anything that was on the agenda this evening.
Brenda Richardson. In regards to Councillor Rowley about the Prince Edward crossing, if council could direct staff to look into the safety of that crossing after a person nearly getting hit today, which was my husband, and because the arms failed to go down at a proper time. A dump truck was hit at the back, bounced, knocked the arm right off the thing, hanging by wires. My husband called it in. Later on this afternoon, the CN police phoned him for the report because he didn't give his name, and their response was poor timing. Thank you.
So you don't have a question? Is that? There. What was your, sorry, ask your question again. I apologize. I was trying to fix a motion here.
Could council direct staff or someone in council be in touch with CN in regards to safety at the Prince Edward crossing, making sure those arms work properly, and that we don't lose our rear end or our transmission as we're going across the tracks?
Thank you. I'm sure Mr. Parkinson was hearing your question, and I know he corresponds frequently with the railways.
If we could just add CP to that also.
Yeah. It's the railways. But the railways, period. Any other questions from members of the public? Go ahead.
Through your worship. The county has submitted a redesign of that crossing. They've had an engineer working on it for a few years, I guess, and they've submitted for the funding for next year. And it's going to include pedestrian gates and then new gates and new lights for the roadway itself too, and then an upgraded of the crossing to make it a little smoother, hopefully.
Thank you. Now I'm going to go to Annie behind you first. Okay, thank you.
My name is Annie Noji. I live on Upper Lane in Brighton.
Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much for everything you have done in the past year, almost a year. I've seen a difference as a citizen of Brighton. Thank you. We had a great presentation by MPAC today. On the 5 major factors, and I'm looking at one of the screen, for 85% of home value, age of property adjusted for any major renovations or addition, living area, location, lot, dimension, quality of construction. As a property owner, that the property has been devastated, so it's not a major renovation or addition, it's the opposite that has happened to many of us on the lakeshore. Can we count on the municipality of Brighton to back us up when we all go to MPAC for reduction in our taxes because of our location that used to be a prime location? We pay extra. We have an additional value of our property because of the location, and because of the same factor, now there's been a diminution. I can say for myself, the cost of recovery for only the coastal engineer to provide a plan and a revetment, a new seawall, this is $45,000. I am not counting of having my front lawn, which is on the lakeside, redone. Many of you have come to visit me, and I thank you for that. There's no more grass. It's stones that now have been embedded, so it needs to be redone. There's extreme cost to be done there, so everyone on the lakeshore that has faced that would appreciate reduction in value. Can we count on the municipality of Brighton to support us in that?
I'm not sure what we can do to support that, other than to say I don't think council would object to a request for reassessment.
Thank you. Because I would prefer not to go into the entire appeal process. I would prefer that when I go there, they are familiar with the problem, and I know it's only a small fraction of citizens of Brighton that are affected, but it affects us. We are the ones who pay already more taxes because we have a property on Lakeshore.
Unfortunately, you probably will have to go through the appeals process. There's no mechanism through the municipality to affect that, because MPAC is a corporation of the province, and they tell us what your house is valued at. We don't tell them much, do we? No. Go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
But I think you can tell them now. You can be in communication now, and I would do that because it's coming up is when they're going to be doing this assessment in the next. So I think you put together some sort of package yourself, and you can deal with them through their website that they gave tonight. But I would also follow up personally.
I will start with one of our presenters tonight.
Yeah.
I'll send an email.
Yeah.
But I guess my point is, I don't want to be there alone. I don't want to be the only person that mentions that there's been damages to our properties. I don't want to be the bearer of the news when it's a fact.
Right. So the municipality can't advocate on your behalf, but I think you could probably indicate that the municipality is aware of the fact that you've lost significant frontage into the lake, because we are. Councillor Tadman.
I can really sympathize with you because I have waterfront property and we pay a lot of extra money just to, and with a lot of nice features, but a lot of inconveniences too. But I would suggest that you take as many pictures as possible because you're going to ask for a reduction. And so when you say it, you hope others will go with you. It's your property that's going to...
Yes.
And I think you've got lots of proof that it's not the same value. You cannot put it up for sale today for the same price you could last year or the year before last. True. And the same with my property. So, and I think we could, if they wanted to get in touch with us, we'd certainly say, we've seen the property, we saw it before.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor
Thank
Bradley.
you. Just on kind of maybe not on the impact note, but as far as the flooding goes, have we had any kind of correspondence, say, from the province or any other, is there any other flood relief programs that will be available for people like Annie who've lost significantly as far as dollar goes? Are there any programs that we can kind of at some point promote for those along the lakeshore that have had significant damage?
There is a disaster relief program through the province, but I'm not sure that we qualify or that the citizens of Brighton qualify. I'm still waiting to hear back from the province on that.
Thank you for that.
Councillor Tadman.
We applied when we had the floods in 2017 and we were denied too, so.
And I have asked very specifically, does council need to do anything? Do we need to make a declaration? Do we need to pass a motion? What do we need to do? I've been told that there's an announcement coming. And I heard that when I was on vacation, that the Premier was making an announcement, and I didn't hear an announcement. So we wait. We wait with patience.
Thank you very much.
Or not, as the case may be. Thank you. Any other questions from members of the public? Mr. McMurray? Yep.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I think everyone knows me here, and my question is about MPAC and how they mitigate things like noise pollution in a municipality. We have a railway, we have two railways running through our municipality, and the noise from the Claxtons is probably 110 dB or thereabouts. It's guaranteed noise pollution. However, if the Lake Ontario should wash up just south of the tracks, you can be very sure that MPAC will be Johnny on the spot to jack up the assessments on the property adjacent to it. However, they don't give a rat's ass, excuse me, for the noise pollution. They won't mitigate your assessment for that reason, unless you happen to be dedicated enough to put a request for reconsideration in. And I understand that everyone would have to do it. The municipality can't take the bull by the horns and get MPAC to mitigate the assessments for everyone within 1,000 yards of the Claxtons. So I just like to point that out, that it's a very one-sided game. It's they have all the aces and all the cards, and they'll stick it to you every time.
Thank you, Mr. McMurray, and it sounds like you answered your own question there, so.
Yeah, I just wondered if the municipality had ever considered going to MPAC and getting them to mitigate assessments within 1,000 yards of the railway. It's, it's something that I would consider, but I don't know whether it's within the realm of possibility.
So I see the Director of Finance is nodding. Perhaps she will be in next time she's in contact with MPAC, she'll mention that.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? So we'll take a 10-minute recess before going in camera. Thank you.